here. Then let me just take you through the instructions first. Let me take you through the instructions. So this paper actually is a very, very long paper. It consists of 30 pages. Then when it comes to the instructions and the informations, it actually consists of 5 sections. It consists of 5 sections, and all questions are compulsory. It consists of 5 questions. Also pay attention to detail that all questions should be answered. You are not given the option of choosing specific questions. You must answer all questions. Then you must start each question on a new page that is straightforward. Then when it comes to calculations, questions which involve calculations, you are always reminded to present your answers correct to 2 decimal places. You must always bear that in mind. Then all steps used in calculations should be shown in detail. They should be shown in detail. Then you may use a non-programmable calculator, which is allowed. Then also stick to the mark allocation for each specific question. Then you are reminded to write neatly and legibly. Then if we look at this table, it has breakdown of the topics which we are going to look at. Section 8 mainly consists of short questions which make up to 40 marks. Then we also have map work and tour planning and foreign exchange together. Then we also have tourism, attractions, culture and heritage tourism, and marketing, where we'll be looking at world icons. We'll also look at world heritage sites which are found in South Africa. Section D, which is made up of 30 marks, it actually consists of our tourism sectors, sustainable and responsible tourism. Then the final topics will be found in section E, where you look at domestic, regional, and international tourism. Then you also look at communication and customer care. Then the total for this paper, the total mark allocation for this paper would be 200 marks. So in tourism, always bear in mind that you only write 1 paper, which consists of a total of 200 marks. Now let's move on to section A, which consists of short questions. Section A, the instruction reads, various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only the letter A up to D next to the question numbers. For example, 1.1 to 1.1.20 in the answer book. So let's go to the first question, 1.1.1. The tourism concepts which appear in an itinerary describing the image below. So in other words, they are asking for your own interpretation of the image which is below. What concept is represented in the image below? All right, as you can see, we do have an image of a person who is actually involved in mountain climbing, or you can call it hiking. He's actually involved in mountain climbing. So we consider that to be an activity. We consider that to be an activity. So our correct answer for that particular question would be D, which is an activity. Then moving from them, we go to question 1.1.2, whereby you are required to the difference between jet lag and jet fatigue. So you are supposed to distinguish between these 2 concepts. What is jet lag? What is jet fatigue? All right, let's look at jet lag first. Let me explain a little bit more on jet lag. Jet lag, you get it after traveling a long distance and you cross many time zones. So it involves the crossing of time zones. Then in addition to that, when you travel from west to east, when you travel from west to east, you get jet lag. Then on the other hand, let's explain what jet fatigue is. When you only travel long hours. So jet fatigue is caused by a situation whereby you fly for a long period of time. So let's look at our options which we have there. The option which best matches the descriptions given above is actually option B. Jet lag is tiredness due to crossing many time zones. When you travel from east to west or from west to east, you actually cross many time zones. And jet fatigue is actually tiredness, which results from a long-haul flight. So our correct answer, which matches the description given above, will be letter B. So letter B is the correct answer for that one. Now let's move on to 1.1.3. Tourists now have the benefit of obtaining their foreign currency through this online method. This topic, this question actually falls under the topic methods of payment. Methods of payment. As you all know that times are changing, even the payment methods are changing as technology changes. So there is now a new method of obtaining foreign currency online. So let's look at the options which are given. So on A, we do have Forex. It does not match what the question requires them. Then stock exchange is a completely different concept which is used in business studies. Then Bitcoin, that refers to a cryptocurrency. So our correct answer, which will remain there with them, it's a banking application, which you can download on your phone, and you can actually buy foreign currency using that particular banking application. So that is the newest of the most recent method which they use when they are buying Forex internationally. So this question is actually falls under methods of payment when traveling internationally. Then let's move on to the next question, 1.1.4. The time difference between London and New York. This question falls under map work and tour planning, and specifically, it is a question on time zones. It is a question on time zones. So in other words, what you are required to do is to look at the time difference between London and New York. So in this case, let's look at the clocks which we are given on the image which appears below. The first image, it has Sydney. If we go back to our question, you find that our question does not include anything which has something to do with Sydney. So for the meantime, we leave Sydney out. We move on to the second clock. If you look at the second clock, that's where you see there's a description written New York below it. So we are interested in the second image. Then if you look at the third image, it is actually written London. So we are also going to make use of the second image. Then the question requires us to calculate the time difference between London and New York. So when we look at New York, when it is 9 o'clock in New York, it will be 2 o'clock in the afternoon in London. So the method or the formula which you can use is you subtract 14 1400 minus 900. 1400 minus 900. Then we put our 0 there, 0 there. Then 14 minus 9, obviously it will give you 5. So let's look at the options which we are given. 5 hours is will be our correct answer, which appears on letter C. So when you're given a sum like this one, you're supposed to subtract the two given times. In London, we are given 1400 hours. Then in New York, we are given 900 hours. So you say 14 minus 9, then you reach your final answer, which is 5 hours. So that is the correct answer then. Now let's move on to 1.1.5. The term used to describe the trend shown in the graph below. All right, you come across different graphs in your paper. So you need to know the topic which you are dealing with specifically then. So if you look at this topic is actually foreign exchange. It is actually foreign exchange. Then foreign exchange refers to the business of transacting from one currency to another. So here we are given on the other axis, we have the rand versus the US dollar. Then we are also given on the other axis, we have various dates which have been provided them. The date starts from 19 January up until 19 August. So as you can see on the line graph, we do have changes. There's a time when the graph will be high and also the time when the graph will be low. Then the question reads, the term used to describe the trend. So our keyword there would be trend. What trend is shown in the graph below? As you can see in the graph, on the 19th of January, one US dollar was trading for 14.5. Then let's move on to February 19. It started trading at 13.5. So I think you can see the difference between the value of the US dollar on these different dates. So the correct term which we use in describing the above trend would be daily fluctuation. Why do we choose daily fluctuation as the correct answer? If you can look at the trend, there's a time when the US dollar is worth more, then there's a time when the US dollar is actually worth less. So we actually call that currency fluctuation. Currencies, they fluctuate on a daily basis. We call that currency fluctuation, the change in the value of a currency. Now let's move on to the next question. 1.1.6. The picture below shows an ancient icon. So this topic is actually world or global icons. So the picture which is below, it shows an ancient. The word ancient simply refers to something which was built a long time ago. So it's an icon which was actually built a long time ago. So we need to identify an icon which is given there. All right, let's try to eliminate the wrong answers then. It cannot be the Berlin Wall because the Berlin Wall was only built after the First World War. So the Berlin Wall cannot be an ancient icon. Let's move on to B. The correct answer would be, it actually shows the Great Wall of China. That picture is actually a representation of the Great Walls of China, which date back to several thousands of years BC. So it fits the description that the walls are actually an ancient icon because they were built several thousands of years before the Christian era. Before the Christian era. So our correct answer will be, those are the Great Walls of China, or that is the Great Wall of China. Then it cannot be the Sydney Opera House because obviously the Sydney Opera House, it's a recent structure which actually was built in Australia. Then it does not represent the Great Pyramids of Giza because even looking at the shape is not anywhere near a pyramid. So our correct answer would be the Great Wall of China. 1.1.7. Ushaka Marine World caters for people with disabilities by. This question actually falls under the factors which contribute to the success of a tourist destination. So we do have 8 factors which contributes to the success of a tourist destination. So out of the options which we are given, we are supposed to choose one which matches the catering of people with disabilities. Factors which contribute to the success of a destination. So the fact that Ushaka Marine provides or caters for people with disabilities, it's how do they do that? How do they cater for the needs of people with disabilities? They actually do that by providing wheelchairs at the entrance. They actually provide wheelchairs for people who are handicapped or people who are wheelchair bound. So they are provided with wheelchairs so that they can navigate the attraction, or they can move around the attraction. So the correct answer there for 1.1.7 would be A, providing wheelchairs at the entrance. All right, let's eliminate the wrong answers there. Terminating the services of incompetent staff members. That's actually not part of the factor whereby the needs of people with disabilities are catered for. That is actually a different factor, which is actually sustainable and responsible management plans, or you can say efficient or ethical behavior of staff members. Then ensuring that all tourists have clean drinking water. That borders more on general safety and health. Then using sign language for the benefit of the visually challenged tourist. This one wouldn't make sense because sign language and it does not apply to what? To visually challenged tourists. So obviously B, C, and D will be eliminated as wrong answers in that particular case. Now let's move on to 1.1.8. Declaring a new World Heritage site in South Africa will. All right, this topic actually falls under World Heritage sites, of which you are aware that South Africa actually currently has 10 World Heritage sites. So if an 11th World Heritage site is declared in South Africa, what will be the benefit for the local communities? All right, let's eliminate the wrong answers then. All right, if you look at A, there are problems with A. Eliminate all poverty and unemployment in the local community. This one is not actually possible for poverty to be completely eliminated. So obviously, this one won't work. It's not possible. It would give South Africa negative word of mouth advertising in the international community. Actually, it will do the opposite. It would actually give South Africa positive word of mouth advertising in the international community. So let's eliminate B. For the fact that they used the term negative, it becomes, or it disqualifies that particular answer. Now let's look at 1.1.8. It will bring tourism infrastructure development to the local community. If you look at this answer, it is actually realistic. When a World Heritage site is declared in a particular country, it would also bring tourism infrastructure such as better hotels, shopping malls around the World Heritage sites will be developed. Then also even better transport services which take tourists to the actual World Heritage sites will be built in that particular community. So C can be accepted as a correct answer. Then let's look at lastly at D, cause other World Heritage sites to close down. This is actually something which is negative. And so that actually disqualifies that particular answer. It won't cause other World Heritage sites to close down. Actually, it would have an opposite effect. It would actually support other surrounding World Heritage sites, in the sense that a tourist can come and visit one World Heritage site, then moves on to the next. So in that way, they can actually create a culture of interdependence, whereby they actually support each other. Different World Heritage sites support each other. So 1.1.8, our correct answer would be C, bring tourism infrastructure development to the local community. Now let's look at 1.1.9, the biggest contributors of the Tomsa levy. Before we even look at the question itself, we need to understand what What is Tomsa itself? All right, Tomsa is actually a levy which is collected. It is actually money collected to fund marketing of tourism products. It is actually money which is collected in funding tourism, marketing tourism products. So all players or different players in the tourism industry, they contribute a particular percentage, which goes to SA tourism, and it is used to market South Africa as a global tourist destination. So we have different players in the tourism industry. We have the car hire sector. Then we also have resorts. We also have game lodges, tour operators, travel agents, guest houses, B&Bs, conference venues, and lastly, we have hotels. So if we look, let's go back to the question first. So the question requires us to look at the biggest contributors of the Tomsa levy. So just by merely looking at the picture, you can see that all the other sectors, they contribute less. Actually, they have lesser or smaller segments which they contribute when it comes to Tomsa. But if you look at the segment which is written hotels, it actually contributes a significant chunk of the Tomsa levy. It actually represents something which is almost 75% of the total Tomsa levy. So in this case, our answer would be D, which is the accommodation sector. It actually contributes a significant chunk of the Tomsa levy. And also, why are we choosing the accommodation sector? Hotels are part of the accommodation sector. Then even if you look at B&Bs, guest houses, and also game lodges, they are also part of the accommodation sector. So in addition to this chunk, you also need to add B&Bs, guest houses, and also game lodges. So eventually that leads us to the accommodation sector, which is actually D as our correct answer. Now let's look at another question again, which requires us to describe or to provide a detailed description of the icon which appears below. So 1.1.10, the picture below shows a type of a World Heritage Site. So we need to determine the category of the World Heritage Site which is there. But before we even get there, we need to start by identifying the icon which is which appears in the picture. The icon which appears in the picture, that's actually the picture of Christ the Redeemer. It's actually a picture of Christ the Redeemer, which is found in the country, Brazil. Then the city is Rio de Janeiro. Then it is also an icon of religious significance. Then in terms of the description, it is a large statue. It is a large statue of Jesus Christ. Now let's go back to the requirements of the question so that we can address the demands of the question. So the question reads, the picture below shows a type of a World Heritage Site. So we are supposed to choose between the 4 different options which we are given. So the fact that it's a large statue, remember statues are works of art. They are actually created by people. So it cannot be a natural World Heritage Site. So obviously we are eliminating A. For the meantime, let's eliminate A as a wrong answer. Now let's go to B. Cultural. Religion and culture, they go hand in hand. So we can accept cultural as a correct description of the icon which is given there. Mixed, it cannot be mixed because mainly people go them for the statue itself, not the mountain which houses the statue. Then the last option, which is alien, it does not is not relevant to the topic being discussed there. Now let's move on to 1.1.11. An example of how airlines support the local community located close to the airport. How can local airlines support the local community? This question falls under the topic sustainable and responsible tourism. Sustainable and responsible tourism, whereby we talk about the 3 pillars of sustainable tourism. So the topic is sustainable tourism. Where you talk about people, the 3 P's, which are people, planet, and also profit. All right. So the pillar which is being discussed here is people. How can local airlines support the needs of people? So there are different options which are given them. Then I would want to eliminate the wrong options and also give reasons why we are eliminating those options. Employ workers from neighboring province. That's an example of an unsustainable way of doing business. Instead of taking from a neighboring province, actually businesses are encouraged to employ from the local. So it goes against the the keyword which says local. So we are eliminating A. Then imports all their uniforms from foreign countries. This is actually something which is negative. When you import from foreign countries, you are not supporting the local community. So we eliminate B as an option. Then gives new computers to a local school. This resonates well with what the community needs. It actually resonates well with the requirements, the expectations of the community. So we can accept C as a correct answer. Actually, this is an example of CSI, which is called corporate social investment. When a business invests in a local school, it is actually an example of corporate social investment, which is something which is desirable. It is something which is encouraged when you're practicing sustainable and responsible tourism. Donate aircraft fuel to the local petrol stations. Aircraft fuel is actually a hazardous chemical. You cannot donate it to local petrol stations. So obviously, in this case, we eliminate D. So after eliminating the 3 options, we are left with C as the correct answer. You give computers to a local school, which is an example of corporate social investment. When a business invests in a local communities. Still on sustainable and responsible tourism, we move on to question 1.1.12. Sustainable tourism practices in South Africa are accredited by. All right, they are actually accredited by FTTT, which represents fair trade tourism. All right, the full meaning of the abbreviation is actually fair trade tourism. So it is an organization which accredits institutions or tourism businesses which practice sustainable and responsible tourism. Then let's also eliminate the wrong answers. The second option, B, the SAA, that actually stands for South African Airways, which is an airline, so it cannot apply. BBR, this is a term used in foreign exchange. That's the bank buying rate. USD, that's the currency code for the US dollar. So we cannot accept that as a what? As an answer. So our correct answer would be FTT. Now let's go to 1.1.3. A way in which a tourism destination can attract environmentally conscious tourists. A way in which a tourism destination can attract tourists who practice sustainable and responsible tourism. All right, there are different options there. Subscribe to online sports magazine. This one, it cannot be an acceptable answer. Advertise plastic packaging products. Actually, sustainable and responsible tourism, it goes against the use of plastic. So we eliminate this one. Donate money to international companies. This cannot benefit. It's not part of sustainable tourism. To publish their pledge to sustainable practices on their website. This will be an acceptable answer. So D will be an example of how a tourism destination can attract environmentally conscious tourists. Now let's move on to 1.1.14. One of the provinces that receives the highest number of international visitors. So our keyword there, we need to highlight our keyword. Our keyword will be international. It will be international. Now let's look at the various options which are given there. All right, we do have Northern Cape. Northern Cape cannot be a correct answer simply because Northern Cape does not have several international airports. And in any case, the international airports in them, they are not as busy as the other neighboring provinces. The same applies to Limpopo and Free State. These cannot be accepted as correct what answers. Then the option which we are left with is Gauteng. Why are we choosing Gauteng? All right, the reason is that OR Tambo International Airport, which is located in Gauteng, is South Africa's international gateway. That is South Africa's busiest international gateway. What do we mean by that? We simply mean that several tourists, they actually use OR Tambo as their port of entry into South Africa and out of South Africa. So OR Tambo International Airport is actually located in Gauteng. So Gauteng will be our correct answer simply because it houses OR International Airport. Several tourists arrive in South Africa through the OR Tambo International Airport. Let's look at 1.1.15. All right, the question reads, night shift hours from then dash can be considered to be fair working conditions. All right, before we choose the correct option then, we need to understand the topic which we are dealing with them. All right, this topic, it is something, it actually falls under the basic conditions of employment. The basic conditions of employment. So when we look at the basic conditions of employment, they look at, we actually look at the number of hours which are allowed by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which is a law which applies to South Africa, which applies to South African businesses. So the law actually states that the number of hours which are allowed is actually 8 hours. 8 hours are considered to be part of fair working conditions in a contract of employment. So now let's look at the options which we are given there. All right, the first option, which is A, it's actually from 11 p.m. up to 7 a.m. the following day. So if you subtract these hours, 23 minus 7, it will actually give you 8 hours. So option A can be accepted as a correct answer because Those are actually 8 hours from 2300 hours up to 7 a.m. the following day. That actually that is the period is actually 8 hours, which is accepted by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Let's look at the second option from 11 a.m. up to 7 a.m. The following day. If you look at these hours, they are actually too much. They go beyond the required 8 hours, because one would start from 11 a.m. Then you would knock off 7 p.m. the following day, which is way too much. It goes beyond the prescribed number of hours under the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. The same applies to option C, whereby someone starts working from 7 p.m. up to 9 a.m. the following day. That goes against the stipulated conditions in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. The same applies to option D, whereby someone works from midnight up to 11 p.m. The same day, which is almost working for a period of 23 hours, and it is considered to be unacceptable. So option B is out, option C is out, and option D is out. So the accepted option there, or the acceptable option rather, will be from 11 p.m. up to 7 a.m. the following day, which is actually 8 hours. All right, now let's move on to 1.1.16. The Code of Conduct gives guidance on the expected, then there's a dash, at work. So we need to fill in the blank. All right, the Code of Conduct normally addresses issues of behavior. It actually addresses the issue of what? Of behavior. Then let's eliminate all the other options. Payment, why not payment? Payment is stipulated in the contract of employment. Payment, this actually, it is actually stipulated in the contract of employment. So it's obviously out. Then the same applies to leave. And also the same applies to the what? To the benefits. These are stipulated in the what? In the contract of employment. So we eliminate them. Then we are only left with one option, which is the Code of Conduct. It actually gives guidance on the expected behavior at work. Expected behavior. It guides on how employees should conduct themselves when they are at work. Now let's go to 1.1.17. When a customer with a temperature higher than 37.5 degrees Celsius enters a restaurant, the restaurant is compelled to take this option. Whenever you analyze a question, you need to identify the topic which it is actually coming from. So this is actually health and safety, which is one of the first topics during the year. So when a customer with a temperature which is higher than 37.5 degrees enters a restaurant, the restaurant is compelled to take this action. Usually this applied to the period when we were under lockdown or we were seriously affected by COVID-19. So we have several options which are given them. We have A. So let's look at A and see if it is possible to take A as a correct answer. It says to send the customer to the ICU at the nearest hospital. This is not the responsibility of a restaurant. They do not have that right to send a customer to the ICU. To have a COVID test done immediately. Restaurants do not readily have COVID tests available. So we're eliminating B as well. To refuse customer entry into the restaurants. They do have that right to refuse someone entry, someone with a temperature which is above 37.5. So we can take C as a correct answer. To get a booster vaccination, that's D. That's an unacceptable. It's actually an unacceptable answer simply because they do not have that right to administer a vaccination on customer. So the correct answer would be C. Refuse the customer entry into the restaurant. Next question, 1.18. A summit is a or an where matters of international significance are discussed. So a summit, we need to know what a summit is. Then we need also to know that the topic where this question is actually coming from. The topic, this is actually, a summit is an example of a global event. It is an example of a global event. So let's look at the options which are there. It cannot be a political situation. Then it can also not be an unforeseen occurrence, but it can be a gathering of heads of state. For example, recently there's been a gathering which is known as the COP27, which took place in Indonesia recently, Indonesia. So it is a gathering of heads of state from different parts of the world. That is the definition of a summit. Then gathering of SADC ministers only. This one won't be correct because SADC only refers to the Southern African Development Community, which is comprising of only the Southern African states. But if you go back to the question, it needs, if you highlight this keyword, which says of international significance. So SADC won't be applicable because SADC is only mainly composed of Southern African states. Yet the question requires you to identify where matters of international significance are discussed. So international matters are discussed at a summit where heads of state gather. So the correct answer will be C, which is a gathering of heads of state. So in this case, we'll be eliminating all the other three options which are given there. Then we only remain behind with C. It's actually a gathering of heads of state. 1.1.19. Tourists must be aware of these criminal activities when doing financial transactions online. It is yet another question which deals with methods of payment. These are actually methods of payment. Times have changed. We now have newer methods of payment whereby you use technology. But still, as you are using technology, you need to be safe as well. So when you are transacting internationally, obviously, your credit cards cannot be damaged because you are transacting online. So you are not doing it in a physical way. So obviously, there is no physical damage. So we are eliminating A. Then personal information can be stolen when using a cell phone. There is a high chance that personal information can actually be stolen as you are transacting online. So B is an acceptable option. Now let's look at why we are rejecting the other options. Personal information can be stolen when paying for goods, paying cash for goods and services. The word cash actually eliminates this particular option, because remember the question is saying online. So online there is no space for you to use what? Cash. Then let's look at D. Personal information can be stolen using by check. Obviously, we are not making any use of checks, and in any case, checks are no longer in use as they were back in the day. So the two words check and cash, they disqualify option C and option D. So we are only left with B as our correct answer. All right. 1.1.20. According to the statistics in the spent column below, visitors are the biggest spenders when visiting South Africa. Let's look at the table in detail. It actually reads on the heading, South African spend and arrivals in 2019. Then there are different regions which appear in different columns there. We have Africa, America, Asia, and the Pacific, Australasia, Europe, the Middle East. Then there's also the grand total, which is listed below there. Then in the second column, you can actually come across the amount of rands spent in each by each region. So when you look at Africa there, actually 34 billion was spent by travelers from Africa. Then we had 6 million arrivals. Then if you look at America, we have 11 billion. Then we have Asia in the Pacific, 4 billion. Then Australasia, 2 billion. Europe, 30 billion. Then just by merely looking at this, you can see that in the spend column, the highest figure or our highest figure will be the amount of rands spent by tourists from Africa, from the African region. So our correct answer will be C. The tourists from Africa were the biggest spenders, because remember, the question requires us to identify the biggest spenders. So the highest amount of money spent, it's actually originated from Africa, which is 34 billion. And if you look at the other regions, there is no other region which goes beyond 34 or which reaches near 34, except for Europe, which is around 30. But 30, remember, it's still below 34. So the highest number of, or the biggest number of spenders, they actually originated from the African region. So that is multiple choice. Now let's look at the next question, which is question 1.2. Choose one word or term from the list below to complete each of the following sentences. Write only the word or term next to the question numbers 1.2.12, 1.2.5 in the answer book, e.g. 1.26 bank buying rat. So we have various options which are provided then. Then the question reads, the first question reads, many Dutch tourists stay at the ski resort in the Black Forest. All right, we need to highlight the key terms in the question. So the first thing is that these tourists are involved in skiing where in the Black Forest. Normally skiing, it's actually associated with adventure tourists. So from the box there, we are taking adventure. Skiing is actually an activity undertaken by adventure tourists. So we are choosing skiing as adventure as our correct answer for that particular question. So I'm going to write it right next to the question. Skiing is done by adventure tourists. It is actually done by adventure tourists. Then the second question reads, 1.2.2, easy access to an attraction resides in a what experience? All right, easy access, when tourists find an attraction to be easy, it is actually a positive thing. So if you look at the options which have been provided there, we do have positive. So we need to write positive as our correct answer. Easy access is actually a good thing. An attraction should be easily accessible. It should be accessible by different modes of transport. It should be accessible by air, by land, or even by water transport. So easy access is a positive thing. So from our box there, we are taking positive. Then the next question reads, the Beaverton-Makonjwa mountains are located in. So in other words, they need the location of these mountains, which are actually a World Heritage Site found in South Africa. So if you look at the Beaverton-Makonjwa mountains, they are found in Mpumalanga province. They are believed to be the oldest mountains in the world which are found in the Mpumalanga province. Found in the Mpumalanga province. Then the next question reads 1.2.4. A foreign travel agent attends Africa's travel indaba as a to find a newly opened luxury client accommodation. So the fact that this one is a travel agent, then why is he traveling to the travel indaba? To find a newly opened luxury client accommodation. Why is he doing that? He is going there in the capacity of a buyer. He is actually going there as a buyer because he's trying to find. The fact that he's trying to what? To find. He's going there as a buyer. So our correct answer would be buyer. Then sheets of ice form over the what? In winter. Over which attraction? Sheets of ice actually form over the Niagara Falls, which are located in Canada. They actually fall over the Niagara Falls, which are located in Canada, and which are one of the celebrated world icons. So these are our answers again. Number one, adventure. The second one, positive. The third one, Mpumalanga. The fourth one, buyer. Then the fifth one is actually the Niagara Falls. Then now let's move on to the next question, 1.3. The instructions reads, choose the correct words from those given in brackets. Write only the words next to the question numbers, 1.3.1 to 1.3.5 in the answer book. For example, 1.3.6 passport. All right, 1.3.1 reads, Robben Island is classified as a natural or cultural World Heritage Site. All right. The first thing which we need to do when we are choosing an option for this particular question, we need to know a description of Robben Island. Robben Island, in as much as it is an island, but the most significant thing then, it is the history which is associated with the island. It is of historical significance. So the fact that it is of historical significance, we are going to take the cultural aspect. It is classified as a cultural World Heritage Site. It is classified as a cultural World Heritage Site. The next question reads 1.3.2. An increase in volume or incentives refers to the higher visitor numbers to South Africa. An increase in volume. Volumes, they actually refer to the number of visitors. In tourism marketing, when we talk about volumes, basically, we are talking about the number of people who came to a particular country or who came and visited a particular destination. So volume refers to visitors. Volumes and visitors, they go hand in hand. So the correct answer would be volume. Will actually be volume. 1.3.3. Successful tourist attractions in South Africa get their products mainly from. This is a question which is which falls under the topic sustainable and responsible tourism. One of the requirements of a tourism business to practice sustainable business practices is to source products locally instead of buying globally. They are encouraged to source products locally. So our correct word there would be local suppliers. Then the next question, it is something to do with UNESCO, which is the United Nations Educational and United Nations Educational Scientific Cultural Organization. So which criteria do they use? They actually use the Roman numbering system. Instead of using the metric system, they actually use Roman numerals. They use the Roman numbering system. Then 1.3.5, a question which is something to do with world icons. The city of Venice was built on many islands. It is a city which was built on many islands, which explains why in Venice, when you want to move around, you actually move around using water transport instead of using road transport. So it was actually built on many, or you can call them several hills. 1.4, choose a term in column B that matches the description of the 21st century technological innovations used to enhance tourist experiences in column B. So we are only going to write the letter A to F next to the question numbers 1.4.1 to 1.4.5 in the answer book. So the first question reads, a digital